And action! Welcome to another action-packed episode of the Action Podcast. We are on episode 45, and today we've got a long list. We took a week off just because it was kind of a slower week, and there wasn't really anything to kind of sell the podcast, if you will. And so because of that, now we have a nice action-packed one with our first film being Emancipation, which is on Apple TV Plus now, directed by Antoine Fuqua and starring Will Smith. The second
and Ben Foster,
of course,
my man.
Yeah. Our second film is what Pete has behind him, Violent Night, which stars David Harbour. Our third film is Darren Aronofsky's The Whale, starring Brendan Frasier. Fourth, we have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which is on Netflix. And lastly, we have Spoiler Alert, starring Jim Parsons. So with that, Pete, let's get into Emancipation. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was beautifully shot. Fuqua did an amazing job. I mean, just even that opening sequence is stunning to watch. Love that it was in black and white. It was really great.
Well, it was muted black and white. There's color in it, but it's highly desaturized.
Yeah. But I mean, I brought you right into that world, and I think it was a shame that Will Smith got banned from the Oscars, because I think that this role really put him in contention for this year. I thought he did a remarkable job in this film. Ben Foster, as always, can do no wrong in my eyes. Great performance by him. You know, I've seen him as somebody that you can love, and I've seen him as somebody that you can absolutely hate, and this is one of those roles for him. I thought it started off a bit slow, but still powerful. And then the end sequence I thought was really quite intense. And so, you know, and I love the family aspect, you know, what drives him and all this stuff. And it's great. I think that, you know, if you have Apple Plus TV, I think you should absolutely see this film. I think it's a must-see, especially if you love beautifully shot films.
Yeah, I agree pretty much mostly with everything you're saying. Definitely visually stunning. I did think it was a tad slow, but still good. My thing, and I kind of, sometimes when you watch a movie, you're either just like, wow, or, you know, you have certain feelings. I didn't come out with this like, this is the best movie I've seen, like some other films. With that being said, I felt like it could have had a couple tweaks that would have just gone a long way. For instance, you know, with Ben Foster's character, we don't really figure out who he is till kind of like way at the very end. And, you know, I think in my mind, that's a mistake because, again, like we always do talk about like creating great antagonists. And if we knew kind of his story earlier, it just felt it was too kind of like not stereotypical, but just hey, he's bad guy, you know. And I think that sometimes he's either got to be so personable like a Hans Gruber, and then, you know, his later part, then it kind of forgives you for that. But with Ben Foster, it just seemed a little too cliche of just, you know, he's the bad white guy.
Instead of being the bad guy, he was just a bad guy, you know. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so I think, and again, I think that's an easy fix. I think there could have been an easy scene, whether you start it or whether it's like the second scene, but just something where early on we really get an idea of who he is and what his story is, so that it makes it more compelling, you know, in this story that we're watching.
And you almost get the sense when you're watching at the beginning that they spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, but a lot of the focus was on all of the other little bad guys, and then all of a sudden Ben Foster shows up like, I'm the bad guy that everyone answers to, but that's it. You know, they don't really get into sort of who he is and why is he such a force.
Yeah. And I think it was a little unclear too, just kind of what, because the movie starts basically with Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. They don't show it, but it's in the title. And then obviously this is the middle of the Civil War. I just didn't understand kind of the setup a little bit. It was a little confusing in terms of uh what they were really waiting for, I guess. Like it just, and I know sometimes it's like I figured out more later, but I don't know. Just I didn't understand why Will Smith got captured. You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand the beginning. Like it just kind of like they took him from his family, but the title before that already said like the slaves have been freed, and so I didn't understand then the motivation for them to kidnap him, if that makes sense. Like,
Well, I think they relied too heavily on knowing about the history of it and understanding that even though that proclamation was signed into law, the South still said, "You guys aren't free in our eyes. Come and get them," kind of thing, and you guys are going to continue to be, you know, you're going to go through the worst horrors that you can imagine. And so, it was either escape or continue forward. And the way this was portrayed, it was like you just keep going.
yeah, and
That's the normal life. And
but I think that needed to be um explained a little bit more. Like I said, I didn't understand
no, no,
the
I
business.
agree.
I didn't understand the business side of the slave catchers. Besides, again, just power and all that. Like again, to me, that's a little too superficial. Like I wanted to really know. I really wanted to get into their minds. Like again, more on a business side. Like it just seemed like too easy, and they didn't want to delve into that. I don't know. It just felt like sweep it under the rug type thing.
No, I agree. But at the end of the day, it's a great film, and great performances, looks
Yeah.
gorgeous. I think it's a must see for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Awesome. So let's move into our next film, which is Violent Night. Again, that stars David Harbour from Stranger Things, among other things. He was also Hellboy on the newer ones, and this John Leguizamo is also in this one. I didn't expect him to see him, but he was great in this as well. And this is directed by Tommy Wirkola. He did Hansel and Gretel. He wrote Hansel and Gretel, if you remember that one, that newer one that's kind of like a thriller kind of hunter movie. Um, but yeah, I'll start on this one. But I went in this one with decent hopes. I was hoping definitely for kind of a bad Santa, kind of vibe to this one, and I definitely think this movie didn't disappoint. What I enjoyed about this movie even more was there's an actual kind of like Christmas element to it. You know what I mean? Like he's not just a guy playing Santa, he's actually like Santa Claus. And it was kind of a unique film in that regard because this wasn't just like it's almost like Die Hard meets Bad Santa. You know what I mean? Like I think that's kind of a cool comp. And it was entertaining. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and that little touch, they could have went the other route, and they went this route, and I think that was absolutely the right call. I love that this was R-rated as opposed to a PG-13 type of film. Like this, I just thought this film worked, and this was super entertaining. And if you like those two films, I think you will like this film.
Yeah, you're going to hear, like I've listened to some reviewers and read some reviews, and the Die Hard meets Bad Santa thing is, you're going to hear about it all the time. I'd throw in some Home Alone in there, which they even reference in the film,
Yes, yes, yes.
as well as just a touch of Rambo as well, like him getting all set up with his equipment before he goes on. But
Yeah.
I got to be honest, I went into this movie with zero expectation, and I was prepared to watch a shit show, because the marketing of this, the billboards and the one trailer that I did actually see made Santa out to be like this murderous Santa. So I thought it was going to be like Santa's a murdering maniac going on a rampage. You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand that what this was actually going to be when I went into it, and boy was I pleasantly surprised. And I think that the marketing did a really good job of that. That he wasn't the bad guy, he was the good guy, but actually Santa Claus and Leguizamo I thought was really great. I mean, he's so comedic when he acts. Even like in the Menu recently, it was
Yeah.
the same thing. Like he's just kind of silly, but he was very, mean but funny at the same time. I was so surprised and happy, and I loved this film. I would recommend everybody go see this film. I even got like really nostalgic as I was watching this film because there are little homages throughout,
Yeah.
um,
Just a
to
well
all of
crafted
these
film.
movies that we've referenced. Yeah, really, really well done. It's one of my favorite films of the year, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
And the
I
little
want to see it.
girl, Leah Brady, she plays Trudy Lightstone.
Mhm.
She kind of helped Santa carry this film. Like she did a really great job.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great job. Awesome. All right, so let's move on next to Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. And going into this film, obviously like even on the billboard, it's Brendan Fraser's has a terrific performance. And I'm not a huge Darren Aronofsky fan. I know he's a good filmmaker and a lot of people do like him, but sometimes his stories just I don't think he's an amazing storyteller, if that makes sense. I feel like he always makes good films that there is an audience for that, but he doesn't always kind of bring it all together. Like Mother is a tough film, and Noah I thought was just missing some things to make it a really kind of coherent film. And so I went into this film a little skeptical, but I knew I had to see this film, obviously partly for this podcast, but this is just a film that you have to
And
see.
don't spoil it for me because I haven't seen it.
I won't. But this movie just again kind of exceeded all my expectations. And the thing I enjoyed about it the most was it was actually kind of like entertaining. And again, that's not
Mm.
Darren Aronofsky's calling card, but the pacing of this film was so great. It's just a really good, again, kind of character driven story, but it wasn't slow, and it is a very powerful film, very emotional. And both myself and Nicole, who I saw it with, we were both you know pretty teary eyed at the end there. So highly, highly, highly,
Yeah.
highly recommend going to see this film. I don't think you'll be disappointed, and it's just an entertaining, really great film, and it's gonna get nominated for awards come Oscar
Well,
season.
he's already up for a Golden Globe for sure, and talking about Oscar for him for sure. I think it'll come down to him or Colin Farrell
Yeah,
for
maybe,
Banshees. Who
maybe.
knows? But yeah, forward to, I can't wait to see it. Just ran out of time, I guess.
Well, and it just to be clear to the audience members, this is
It's
only on
limited, no?
release right now.
Yeah.
So I had to go see this in Burbank to actually go see this. So it's supposed to be, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, released to more theaters. So stay patient. But if you again, if you get a chance to go see this, I highly recommend it. And our next film is released on Netflix, and this is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And this is a animated film. It is, I don't know if it's actually stop animation, but it gives the appearance that
No, it's stop motion.
it is stop motion.
It's absolutely stop motion animation.
Okay. And yeah, I thought it was maybe just like it's 3D. I thought it was a 3D generated film, just and then they just made it look stop animation. But what was your take on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio?
Yeah, I was not looking forward to this at all. Even though he's a award-winning, amazing, acclaimed director. I think the Disney release of Pinocchio just sort of there was so much buildup to that and such a huge letdown that I was like, great, another Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Let's All right, let's give this one a shot. But visually, like visuals aside, because it's gorgeous, phenomenal. And if you know anything about stop motion animation, and how long this film is and how long it must have taken to move each of those little characters
Yeah.
throughout this film, um, you would appreciate this film just based on that alone. I This reimagining of the Pinocchio story, because it doesn't follow that normal Disney version. I loved that the beginning of it, they give you that whole backstory about Geppetto's son
I
and who
love
he
that
was
part.
and how he died. So you get all of that first, which is like I was already hooked at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and then they get into Pinocchio, who a little bit annoying, but you get it because he's innocent and he's got no idea about life and how to live it. So you just keep moving forward. And then, you try to separate yourself from this Pinocchio story that you already know
Yeah.
because it's different. I mean, there's hints of stuff. There's still a whale. Um,
Well, it's
there's
it's more truer to the actual original Italian Pinocchio story, right?
sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I will say that I was entertained and all the way through, only because since I didn't know this original Pinocchio story, if that's what this truly was,
Yeah.
then it had me hooked and it kept me going throughout. I think one of the funniest things is the monkey, the sidekick of
Yeah.
oh, what's that character's name?
Volp.
Waltz.
Volp.
No, the Waltz, the actor,
Yeah, Christoph
Inglorious
Waltz. He plays like
Christoph
Volp.
Waltz. Yeah, his voice. I mean, he does so good. Like, finally,
He's like
thank
yeah,
God
he's perfect
he
for
was perfect for that role. His acting is perfect in it, even though you don't get to see him. It's like, thank God, since that Western that he did, like, finally we get to hear him do something really well again. His sidekick, that little monkey's name is Spazzatura,
yeah,
which
Count Volpe or
okay, Spazzatura in Italian means trash can. So I always laughed every time somebody yelled out Spazzatura. That
yeah,
was my
and
favorite part.
that was Kate Blanchett. I mean, there's a ton of great voices in this. This is I'm just read a couple of them. Ewan McGregor is
Jiminy.
Cricket. Yeah, Jimmy
Yeah.
Cricket. Ron Perlman is Podesta. John Turturro is Dottore. Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things is Candlewick. Kate Blanchett, like I mentioned, is Spazzatura. Tim Blake Nelson is Black Rabbits. Christoph Waltz, Count Volpe. Tilda Swinton is Wood Sprite, Death.
So
Tom
good.
Kenny is Mussolini. um,
That was funny.
yeah, those are like the main voices. But yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and but being in animation, I was blown away by what it took to make this film. Um, and I think they pulled off something really, really remarkable. It saved Pinocchio the name.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, we already reviewed the Tom Hanks Disney Pinocchio, and I was probably underwhelmed in general. I mean, I thought it was okay, but nothing like, oh man, incredible. But this one was again way better, way more hooked. Like I said, like you said, that backstory with Geppetto's son was like, this is just a darker, but I think truer. Like I know some people are just afraid to have like darker themes, but this just felt way more real. And I like that because, these things happen and you're not telling your kid things that aren't real. And I just love this take on it because it wasn't really pulling punches
Yeah,
and
but on
it
that
made it
note,
more
like,
emotional.
yeah, I don't know if I would show this one to my daughter, who's 8. I've been debating, like, when I watched it, I'm like, is this a little too much for her? Um, Maybe in a year or two. I don't know.
No, I think you can. Like I said, I think especially if you have a mature child, but again, you're teaching them themes that they can handle. It's not going to be an easy film, but like that's I think a good thing. Like you're right. She might cry. She might, but I always remember just my childhood and and being able to ingest some of these things, especially because I had older brothers, you being one of them. But I ingested things that I probably wasn't quote unquote ready for. But again, you learn how to deal with that. You learn how to adapt. And,
Yeah.
that's, I think, a good part of the growth. And again, I don't think this is like inappropriate. I just think it is more mature themes and whatnot. And again, if you have a child that is, I think, able to process things, then I think it's appropriate. But again, not for every child, but I think for some it is. But again, I highly recommend it as well. Check it out on Netflix. Throw away your, like you said, Pete, your preconceptions of
Yeah.
Pinocchio and just go
Don't
into
go
it.
into this thinking it's another Pinocchio movie, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. Awesome. And then lastly, we have Spoiler Alert starring Jim Parsons. And
Which I did not see.
yeah, this is directed by Michael Showalter, who did The Big Sick, if you saw that one. And
Highly acclaimed.
yeah, he's a good director. I thought this movie was okay. This was a romantic comedy, and but it's based off a book, and it's basically about the relationship between two guys that aren't good at relationships, that you know ultimately kind of fall in love, and then having to deal with one of them going through a terminal illness. And I thought
Oh,
this was,
heavy.
it's heavy. It is emotional. The ending was pretty emotional. um Sally Fields is great in this. The dad in this was great too.
I thought it
uh,
was a comedy.
it,
No?
it is, but it's like a serious comedy. And that's probably my biggest complaint is, I love Jim Parsons, which is why I saw this. And you know, I wanted almost like, this was definitely more, because I love his Sheldon character, and I know he's not Sheldon, he's Jim Parsons, but I've also heard Jim Parsons, in interviews and stuff like that. So he is a very funny guy, and I just wanted more humor from him, to
Mm.
help balance again, kind of a lot of the kind of emotional drama of it. I
Yeah,
think.
maybe he wanted to get away from that.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
didn't
no,
want to
and this
always
is
just,
definitely that. Um,
yeah.
I'd say my only kind of complaint was it was slightly a little too gratuitous. Romantic comedies, you don't expect kind of stuff like that, even whether it's I was thinking it was gonna be more like an Adam Sandler type of romantic comedy, but this was a little more aggressive on some scenes. But it is what it is.
Like Bros.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not Bros, but it
I
was
mean,
still a
Bros
little
was,
more. It was a little more than than I guess wanted to see, but it's all good.
yeah.
So that would be my caveat for people. It's not for everybody, but I thought it was a single, a decent film. Um, and again, I do think Jim Parsons was great on it, though. It's good to see him, kind of nail other roles. So
Yeah.
yeah. So with that, Pete, coming up
Oh,
next,
I'm sorry. One small note. If you, because I love documentaries,
yeah.
real fast on Netflix. If you want to see a great documentary, watch Senior, which is it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
the life and times of Robert Downey Sr. Robert Downey Jr. helped, I believe, produce it. The guy that directed it did like Fire, Branson, which just came out on HBO Max and was the
Robert Downey
EP on
Jr. was
Tidal.
heavily involved in it. He was heavily involved.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You go through so many emotions. There's a ton of comedy, in the relationship between he and his dad and his mom. Even is just amazing, and then it's really, really just heartbreaking at the end. Fantastic. Go see it. It's really a great watch.
Awesome, awesome. And for next week, new release wise, the big fish that's coming out is, of course, James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel to the
Here we go.
highest grossing film of all time.
Here we
And
go.
I-
It's finally time,
yeah,
because
after what?
I,
How long has it been? Six
I
years?
think, yeah, about 20 years
It's
maybe.
been a while. Actually, you're right. I
A
think it's
buddy of
like
mine worked on it. He worked on this production, and he has like been MIA for like literally 5 years. Like, I haven't heard from him. So hopefully it was worth it. We'll see.
We'll find out. They've
I'm
already
tired of
greenlit.
seeing trailers, so this is a good day because I don't have to see these trailers anymore.
Yeah, they've already greenlit, obviously, the third one. And I've heard James Cameron's already written written a treatment, I think, for the fourth one. And apparently executives are excited about the fourth one. He's not signed on to direct the fourth one yet, but apparently that's still in the works. So
third one should come out in 2035, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Right. And then on our Action podcast, we just released Die Hard. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check it out. And then we also have upcoming Home Alone, which will be out as well, and Elf, among other films that are going to be released. So with that, Pete, that is a cut. Thanks, guys.